morning, guys. Welcome to Emerge Online. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Clint.
This morning we're coming at you from the lobby of the Community Life Church. Looks probably a little different than you might have remembered it, but we are in the middle of renovations again. We've just been trying to find quiet, still places where we could come and film the message for you guys. So we're just getting ready for when we can all be back together again. We're so excited.
Yep, but in the meantime, we're going to continue reaching out to you on video in this way. This is week 4 of a series we're calling What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. For example, when your building is turned upside down and you haven't seen your friends in like 9 weeks and just you don't know when it's going to... Anyway, it's been crazy. So it's a perfectly timed series. So what we want you to do is find a quiet place, go there, text a friend, send them the link to this video, and y'all watch them together. We're going to give you 10 seconds. They'll pop up on the screen for y'all to do that, and then we're going to jump right into the message.
We'll see you soon.
So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? You'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
For the past few weeks, we've been trying to answer this question. What do you do when you don't know what to do? Here in week 4, we're continuing to discuss this. And sometimes we're realizing that in my life, and in our lives, and probably in your life as well, and things can be hard and things can be difficult and painful as we're walking through them.
We've been looking at the life of Joseph and all of the things that he's experienced, from being the favorite child and because of that being hated by his brothers, to murder plots where they tried to plot to kill him, but instead showed him the grace of just being sold into slavery instead.
Right.
And we've talked about how he was faced with a difficult decision, and even though he made the right and the good decision, he still ends up in jail. Because of not choosing the wrong thing to do. And so we're continuing with that. Again, just looking at what to do when you don't know what to do. What do we do when the problems that we face in life seem like they don't have a purpose, or they're not going to serve us in any way?
Some of you may have read ahead and read the rest of Joseph's story as we read it in the book of Genesis. And it seems like it ties up with a neat little bow at the end. Maybe like some of your favorite movies. As you're looking at the difficulties and the struggles that the protagonist or the main character of the story or book or movie, your favorite movie, is in, you know that there's an end of that movie, and usually if it ends with some sort of like happy party or a wedding or something fun. And in our lives, it isn't always like that. It's difficult and messy, and usually it takes, or sometimes it takes years just to get to some sort of information or some sort of like the end, or some sort of way that we know, hey, like that was all for a reason, that was all for a point.
And it can be so hard to see that in the moment, because unlike movies, when we walk through struggles in our lives, we don't always have people walking alongside us. We don't always see where the good and where God is showing up in those times. And sometimes we just sit there like, why me? How could anything good come from this? And we see Joseph in the same situation in the story that we're going to look at today. So from free man to slave to prisoner, if anyone had the right to ask, why is this happening to me? We know that it would be Joseph. And finally, we pick up with him in jail for a crime he didn't commit. But then he finds some new friends.
Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined.
Pharaoh is like the king of kings in Egypt. I'm sure most of you know that, but if you didn't, he's like the head honcho. And so if you do something that he doesn't like, you're lucky to end up in jail, let's just say. And so that's exactly what happened to the cupbearer and the baker. I don't know if they just mixed up the wine wrong and just put poppy seed muffins instead of chocolate chip muffins on the table. Who knows? I don't know Pharaoh's taste. Anyway, so these two guys end up in jail, and it just so happens to be the same jail that Joseph was in.
The story continues. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a message of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams."
So if you remember at the very beginning, week 1 of this series, Joseph is in this whole mess because he had a dream and he interpreted it to his brothers. So he's the guy who knows what dreams mean with the help of God interpreting them. So these guys tell Joseph that they're struggling with these dreams that they had. Joseph interprets them, is able to honor God even in the middle of his very difficult situation of being in jail, again, as an innocent man. And so he tells these guys, I think the cupbearer is the one who ends up, his dream means that he's going to be promoted to a higher position, or at least let out of jail,
Yeah.
At least. And then, so Joseph tells him that, and that's what happens. For the baker, unfortunately, he doesn't meet such a great fate. And so Joseph tells him that, and then that's what happens as well. So these things are coming true based on Joseph's interpretations. And then the story continues on. You can read the rest of it in Genesis, but we're just going to summarize. Pretty much what happens is the cupbearer goes back to Pharaoh and works with him. And Joseph is sitting here thinking, I got someone on the outside, right? Like someone to remember me. I made these buddies in jail, and one of them is back at the Pharaoh's house. And you'd think that this guy would go to Pharaoh and be like, "Hey, Pharaoh, I know that you have dreams a lot. Well, lucky for you, I know a guy who can interpret those for you." But unfortunately, that's not what happens. That the cupbearer goes back to Pharaoh and goes back to real life and forgets about Joseph. And so in the middle of all of this, Joseph, again, in jail for a crime he didn't commit, if that's not bad enough, still honors God through interpreting the dreams and being there for his buddies. And now he's being forgotten about. And it's not a short time that he's left behind. But eventually, Pharaoh has a dream that he's dejected about and that he needs help with. And then what happens?
2 years later, the cupbearer is like, "Oh yeah, I do know a guy who can help you with this situation." And so after all of this, they were able to call on Joseph, who had just been sitting in prison waiting for the cupbearer to remember that he was able to be helped and could do this. And finally, anyway, Joseph got the opportunity to come and speak to Pharaoh, interpret his dreams, and needless to say, Pharaoh was blown away by Joseph. I remember all the blessings that came upon Potiphar's house when Joseph touched anything, or whenever Joseph was able to work and do different things inside of Potiphar's house, just how God continued to bless Potiphar through Joseph. Well, those same blessings came to Pharaoh in his house through Joseph's work and just his closeness to God. I love that even in the fact that Joseph is in jail, right, for a crime that he didn't commit, he still turns to God. He still calls back on his faith to help him in that situation, to help interpret those dreams. I think that is so characteristic of a man or a person with integrity, just that faith that doesn't stop regardless of their situation.
Hard things are going to happen in life. You may be walking through the middle of something really difficult right now, but it's important for us to remember, just because something happens doesn't mean it was something God did to you or wanted for you. Life's not fair. People hurt each other. There's sin in this world. And when it seems like it may be impossible for something good to come out of whatever you may be walking through or whatever you're facing, remember that God is really good at doing the impossible. We'll continue to look at the life of Joseph and see how he continues to show up. But here's a verse for you to remember and hold on to, just to see how good God really is.
And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This verse that Paul gave to the people of the Roman Empire is not supposed to be a pill that fixes all of your hurts. It's not intended to be the medicine that makes you feel all better, but hopefully it provides a little bit of hope for you if you're struggling in a difficult time.
So when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. You may find yourself on the other side of this eventually. Maybe you can't see the end goal right now or what God may be doing, but maybe God is helping you walk through whatever you're going through right now so that you can help someone walk through the same thing later.
So when we go through the pain and we can't see a purpose in our lives, it's important for us to remember two things. One, remember that no one else has your life story. That you were placed here and you have very specific challenges and struggles, gifts and talents, abilities. Our families are all different, that you are unique for a reason. And two, remember that your story can interact with others. I hope that this gives you comfort, knowing that hopefully your struggles and the challenges, the hurts and the pain that you're going through right now will be able to be used, if you will let it, to help encourage and uplift and lead others through their difficult times as well. Because we know if we can't get out of a difficult or painful situation, at least the next best thing is having someone to walk through it with us. Someone who's been through those difficulties before and who has survived and thrived on the other side.
So the important thing that we want you to remember is that whatever you're walking through, whether it's now or something you face later, you're not alone. We talked about earlier in this series how God is with us even when we can't see him or recognize what his plan may be. But knowing that God still has a purpose for his glory in the midst of all of the things happening around us.
I'm sure when Joseph was in prison, he couldn't see God's plan for his life. But God was able to use that experiences to help him in the future. That pain had a purpose. And as we'll talk about next week, there's immeasurable blessings for him and his family and thousands of others through his faithfulness to walk through those situations and lean on God. We love you guys, and we can't wait to see you soon.